Barclays Bank, our country, your bank. And Smart, bringing people together.
And welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
And I'm Gavin Courtney.
And thank you for joining us this Thursday morning. A wet and a cool morning, I gotta say that much.
I know. And I think last night we had a bit of thunder and lightning.
Yeah, definitely. So for the past 2 nights, actually, it's just been a really heavy downpour. You know, I want to venture to say that we are now kickstarting our rainy season.
Oh, yeah.
But of course, we'll make the forecasters tell us that much. But it has been quite a bit of rain, very much welcomed. And, you know, in my opinion, well-timed, too, because nighttime rain for me is better than daytime.
Oh, I know. It was a bit hard to leave my bed this morning, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and we know that it's been helping the situation up north with the drought, as it has allowed for some of the water to be able to finally move.
Yeah, I know. And I think it's also, I've heard that it's also been like helping, you know, the course of the rivers and all of the things that are going on over there as well.
Yeah, Mother Nature, she definitely swoops in at the time we needed her. Clearly we needed rain earlier, but I know that that problem was only progressively getting worse and impacting the health of children and people in the area. So gladly the rains are coming in and helping out with that situation as well, right? And also allowed us to put the issue of pollution in the rivers on the front burner.
Yep.
Right, but of course we got a couple things to talk about. First of all, KTV Latino, let's get in that reminder.
Yeah. We had our audition show premiere this week. Next week, really exciting. The live shows are going to start every Tuesday at 8:30.
Yeah. The premiere at the Bliss of the live show is going to be 8:30. And that's next Tuesday. We do want to say, of course, that that's one of those shows you definitely want to head on out to. We have some great performers lined up. You're going to see who's going to make it to the stage. I know everybody's excited because season 1's winner, Ishmael Chacon, is going to be back on stage. People loved him then. They still love him now. He's going to be a featured performer for the opening night. So it's going to be great to see him back on stage as well. And I think he's going to set the bar pretty high for the rest of the performers.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so that show takes place, as we said, at 8:30. You can get the tickets here at Channel 5 on Coney Drive. We have our usual outlets as well, where you can be able to pick up those tickets, and they're all $5 each.
Yeah.
Great family event that you can go on out to.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, if you're a music lover, like most of us are, I think you're going to really enjoy it. Yeah. Especially, of course, if you're a fan of Spanish music, it's definitely the show for you.
And we have some great partners too who really allow us to give some great raffles throughout the show. So it's not like you can actually go home with a couple of gifts in addition to that. So make it an event where you go out with your family. We suggest the live show or the entire season, but at least once during the course of the season. It really is going to be a completely different experience from watching it on television. Yeah. And if you can't go out to the Bliss, of course, it's live on Channel 5, and you can also stream it live on KTV Latino's page. So find it on Facebook.
Wherever you are in the world, you can watch KTV Latino. Yeah.
You know, and we have Belizeans who are living abroad that we know are faithful viewers of our programs. They're scattered all over the world, and they always tune in, whether it's to the news, to some of the entertainment shows, to this morning show, special good morning to you. And we're so grateful for that. They clearly want to keep their connection.
Yeah, so thanks for all the support.
Yeah.
We definitely appreciate it. So wherever you are, good morning again.
And, you know, I think it's just one of those things too. We're so proud of who we are and where we come from, and we get this little slice of, heaven here on earth just to call our own. We can brag about our reef, our jungles, everything that we have. And another thing that a lot of people are usually very supportive of is our pageant queens.
Yes. And so the latest news is that our current newly crowned Miss Belize has been trending. So Destiny has been getting a lot of support online in these online contests, in events. We're seeing a lot of memes being shared about her, so her face is everywhere at the moment.
Yeah, you know, and I think that this is key. The world has changed a lot in how you can get exposure. I remember from Rebecca's journey, and even with Janelli, it was important that you keep that visibility of your queen going. And I think that's kind of been the campaign of everyone here, trying to get her noticed internationally. And so she made a couple of top contender lists, which is great to know. Doesn't mean that we get complacent, means that we have to keep on pushing. The pageant date has not been announced as yet, as far as I know. So it means that we have to be consistent with it as well.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, as energetic as she's been in terms of like, you know, getting out there, showing her personality, showing who she is, you know, so hats off to her for that. But there's also a little bit of work that we have to do in terms of supporting her, you know, like clicking those like buttons in those contests. And of course, turning out to watch the show whenever it does air.
That's right. All right, so that's just a quick little update there. We'll let you know if anything else develops over time as we prepare for what will be the international pageant. But we got to get moving into our weather update, and we're going to be finding out in just a few what we can expect, whether this rain is going to be just nighttime or we'll see some of it during the day. I definitely welcome the cooler temperatures during the day.
Oh, yeah,
I'm fine with that.
I always know when rainy season starts is the first time I go outside and my car is just completely fogged up.
I thought you were going to say she's completely clean. That's what I like about the rain.
Yeah, that too. But
all right, so Mr. Gentle will be giving us an update in just a few. Oh, there he is.
Here we go.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
How are you today?
Yes, I'm doing okay.
All right, so we are commenting how nice and cool it is this morning after the passing of the rain.
Yeah, we having some cool mornings, but afternoon temperatures expected to ramp up as we have a broad area low pressure dominating our weather. It produces light winds and some heating during the daytime.
Okay. And I know that NEMO had issued an advisory about 2 days ago about this broad area of low pressure. There was no chance of developing, or there was a low chance of developing, I should say. Is there any
very low. Yeah.
Any further update on that?
The system is expected to weaken as it moves across northeastern Yucatan and into the Gulf of Mexico. However, it will continue to support relatively moist and unstable conditions for the next few days over here.
Okay. All right. And so let's get into the rest of the forecast. What are the winds going to be like?
Okay. We're expecting a few showers and isolated thunderstorms to develop again over inland areas, and the activity is expected to spread towards the coast during the early part of the night, accompanied by some periods of rain. And it should clear by midnight, and with generally isolated activity after that.
Okay. And what about our temperatures?
Okay, we're expecting about 88 along the coast today, 95 inland, 84 in the hills. Nighttime temperatures, 78 along the coast, 73 inland, and 68 in the mountain pine ridge.
And looking forward to the end of the week and the weekend, how long are we going to be seeing these showers and thunderstorms?
We're expecting this pattern to persist for the next 2 to 3 days, where we start out with very little rainfall during the early morning hours, or most of the showers beyond the reef. We see thunderstorms developing over inland areas, and then the activity spread towards the coast.
Okay. All right. And keeping an eye out for any potential storms? Are there any systems that we need to be monitoring at this time?
The only one right now is the broad area low pressure dominating our weather, and as I mentioned, this is expected to weaken as it moves into the Gulf.
All right. Well, I think we can all collectively say it's welcomed rain, so it's not so bad.
Yeah, could be worse.
Does this mean that we are officially seeing the rainy season and the drought is over?
Yeah, we definitely been getting some relief from the rains, and we think that this would continue for the near future.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for that update, Mr. Gentle.
Okay, welcome.
You have a great day.
Thank you.
All right.
There you have it.
So keep those umbrellas handy.
Yeah, but we can expect a little bit of heat today.
Yeah. No, and I mean, when you think about it, it's so logical when all that steam starts to come up and it feels so humid.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I like the rain as well. So.
All right, so we're going to get moving into our lineup for this morning. We have a couple conversations that we'll be having.
Yeah. So for our first segment, we'll be speaking with Fermin Oliveira, who is a social worker, and he's going to be talking to us about children in conflict with the law.
All right. And the second part of our show, we're going to be getting an update from our local sugar producers, the ASR BSI company. We know that there are some regional meetings taking place with sugar stakeholders and another important meeting taking place today. So we'll get an update as to what the conversation has been like and whether or not they've been able to make any breakthrough with their current impasse.
And finally, we are going to be speaking with Transparent BPO. They're going to be talking to us all about their really exciting job fair that's coming up this weekend.
All right, so that's what we got lined up for this morning. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll get right into the show. So stay tuned.
and welcome back to Open Your Eyes. Joining us now is Mr. Fermin Oliveira, who is a social worker and the former executive director of the Community Rehabilitation Department. Good morning, Fermin.
Yes, good morning, good morning. Just a little, well, two things. I don't know what you all do to be bouncy so early in the morning, but yeah, I was the former director of the community rehab. At some point I did that for a number of years. And of course the counseling center fell under that department, the youth hostel fell under that department. And there was a big move at the time for community-based interventions. What to do with kids, preferably outside of institutional care, to bring maybe some levels of rehabilitation in their lives. So yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
So we're talking about children who are in conflict in the law. So maybe we can start by breaking down, which children we're talking about there.
Okay, well, in a nutshell, these children are those that, maybe have committed some offenses. So they're in conflict with the law. And there is a little population that if they're considered uncontrollable, then they can also fall into that scope of that work. The kids that are beyond parental control, they can enter into that kind of system, the system that deals with kids in conflict with the law. So yes, so you can think about these persons, and I think people sometimes do. These are young offenders, so to speak. But not every young person in institutional care is a young offender. Some of them have behavioral problems. Yeah.
So there's a differentiation between where children are placed, right? You have the hostel. We have Wagner's. Well, talk to me about these systems and who they are supposed to serve.
Well, to the best of my understanding, knowing that I have been out of that formal setting for many years. I mean, it's in excess of, I think, about 10 years now. But there was a need, let me put it this way, Marlene, there was a need to develop a kind of a continuum of care where from a least restrictive to a maybe more restrictive depending on the needs of young persons, including maybe places for young persons with mental situations that are maybe not all there. So the youth hostel was the kind of a setting where a number of groups could go. People that were on remand, meaning young persons who are awaiting trial or some kind of a thing, they would be placed there, along with people who have been sentenced to be there, kind of placed there for rehabilitation purposes. Of course, males and females could go there. And then I think the Wagner's Youth Facility came on stream at some point as also services for persons who were not in conflict but maybe high risk. Now that needs to be verified. And I must tell you, there are persons who are maybe more knowledgeable about the actual setting today. But that was supposed to be the function for the youth. Is it the youth cadet, right?
Yes, there's also the cadet.
The cadet, yeah. That will come for services for periodic times. It's kind of residential living. You go home on weekends, those kinds of things. Yes.
Yeah. I think it's important because I think we don't pay attention as much to these institutions until an issue comes to the surface. So we don't think of the children at hostel. In fact, we very rarely think of them as children until there's a major issue that arises. But it is critical to understand from people like you who've worked in the system, just what happens in a child's life that leads them to be in an institution like the hostel or like Wagner's or in conflict with the law.
Well, this is no secret, Marlene. The history underpinning those young persons, those children that enter these institutions, including other institutions like child care, which is a completely different institution. It's abuse and neglect. At the heart of that is child abuse and neglect issues. It's the kind of mechanism that has served them to hurt them. So after a history of abuse and neglect, doing poorly in school, and all the things that accompany these persons, they end up in institutional care because they have committed some kind of offense or are beyond parental control. So that's their history. I always thought about this as, you know, it's when we fail in catching kids early, we end up punishing them later. And even at the time when I was there, it happened selectively in extreme cases, but and most regrettably, you had people navigating through all of these systems and ending up ultimately at prison facilities. That's, maybe it wasn't something publicly known, but it happened in rare instances. I suspect that those kinds of things might still be happening, and really they should not.
Yeah.
You know, you hear if your behavior is can't be managed at the youth hostel, for example, then you will kind of graduate into those things. I don't want to say much about that, except that those things need to be checked. And it's not up to the institution to do that. There must be other players in the system that have some level of responsibility or interest or care to check these systems that it works. Without checks, it falls into the hole, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I think also what you say sort of begs a question of, you know, abuse and neglect being the root causes of these things. When the children do end up in these facilities, you know, I think the question on everybody's mind is what is the type of care, what sort of resources are being used, what access do they have to things like therapy, counseling, what have you, in order to improve the problem that, you know, exists.
I imagine that that you have those, but those are for the people that are there to say that. What I can tell you is that needs to be the biggest aspect, the programs. I think when we think about development or so, you think infrastructure and so on, those are great, but when you're talking about people rehabilitation, along with infrastructure, conveniences, buildings, rooms, that kind of thing, you need programs, which requires skilled people to come in, which requires, and I don't want to, I'm just being critical here, high energy people to come in. So you need to have maybe younger person without kind of getting into ageism, but you can't really have, and maybe we have a history of this, of grandparents raising young kids. It's not a good formula. They can be a part of, but they can't be that major, because they just do not have the energy. So you need the kind of people to be working at these facilities. And of course, hopefully you're thinking that they're well trained and stuff like that. But so it's a combination of the human factor and the systemic factor. How many do we need? I can tell you, you know, you need so many people to work I mean, so many workers to be able to manage and address so many bodies there. In institutional settings, that becomes a dance that you have to do, because you know you want your best and most persons when everybody is at the institution. You know, and this fluctuates. Mostly on the weekends, that's when you want programs, and when you want activities, that's when you want all the things to keep these young persons occupied as best as possible.
You know, we naturally, we're very compassionate about the issues that children face, with the exception of when they come in contact with the law. If we think of perpetrators of gun violence as a classic example, you know, the juvenile justice reform, looking at the protections that are in place for them, even from restricting their name and faces and being made public. Those are things that people have been extremely critical about. But I guess my question really leads me to the fact that the public wants accountability from children who come in conflict with the law. But is it that we are missing the boat, that we need to find more interventions to be put in place, that we don't end up in that scenario?
Well, of course, Marilyn, I think, well, I know that there has been a shift in how we see kids. And yes, we have come a long ways. We have lots of technology, many advances in knowledge, many advances in understanding human behavior. And so we have moved from that punitive way of doing certain things. That is not, let me say this, rehabilitation is a tough job, you know. It's a tough thing to do.
Yeah.
If I think about it in social work or in the military, that's like the special forces of social work. To do rehabilitation work with these kids. Let's just put it right out there. You know, it's very difficult to do. And we have, because we know that it's oppression and duress and a history of abuse and neglect, that is what needs to change. And the adults must have the responsibility. I think we pay more care at image instead of results. And when it comes to institutional care, and I kind of hear it, it's the image. Well, the image is reflected based on what happens, on the reactions. And you know, yes, maybe we are aware of the big things that happen, but then that's a reflection of something else. And we must hold adults responsible for that. It's the state. And you know, this is not like a family. Yes, families have responsibility, but it takes another layer. When you put a child in state care and something goes wrong, people need to be outraged, especially if the answers are not forthcoming. I think that's something that, at least to my mind, hasn't been handled satisfactorily, you know.
Then we only have anecdotal information about these things. And so we have been told repeatedly that a part of the reason why we see younger children being involved in criminal activity, specifically young men, is capitalizing on the very protection systems that have been put in place for them. In other words, I will recruit a 16 or 17-year-old to be able to execute a crime on my behalf for the very reason that, you know, if he goes to jail, there's a lot more sensitivity in handling that particular case.
Well, to suggest that, what we call that in social work language, blaming the victims. You look at the situation and you blame them. Oh, you have so much liberties or so much rights or so. Well, that's the way to go. It's a rights-based movement. Actually, the contrary has been what has hurt us. So to suggest that, you know, maybe, you know, the
that we're protecting
and
children too much,
protecting them too much is just completely ridiculous. To let me say that, you know, what we call maybe protecting kids, you know, or the absence of protecting, or how do you correct behaviors? People, don't get me wrong, lots of people are still doing great things with their kids in rearing great, fantastic children out there, irrespective of how they met, local, you know, people are raising great kids, you know. You watch what they do. And this is how you come to some kinds of conclusion. You watch at the histories of children that enter institutions, and you will see actually gross neglect, abuse. That is what has hurt them. The more of that we have, the more we'll see kids needing or going into these.
Let me dive into this deeper, because I know the commissioner most recently spoke of the issue of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and he's expressed that children are not being taught responsibilities along with these rights. Now, we're approaching the 30th anniversary of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and Belize is one of the it's like the 5th signatory to this convention, looking at special protection mechanisms. There are only 3 countries in the entire world that have not signed on to this convention. And so we have implemented quite a bit in being able to have the proper protections and ensuring that children can reach their full potential. But yet we seem to be regressing to a time where people say, oh, well, children have too many rights and now parents have less rights, and that's why we have the situation today.
Well, yeah,
I want you to respond to that.
Yeah, well, let me say this. It's not the rights to children that is problematic. Actually, I am convinced that is not the case. And I'm just baffled even by the question. You know, so it's difficult. Let me share this, because I'm thinking about it. we need to wake up to a reality that the idea of the rights of children is not just jargon, is not just language.
Yep.
The rights of children should be action-based. And the least actions we do in this regard, then this is what we have. You see? And I'm saying this not to suggest that okay, children need to need to be punished. I mean, responsibilities. What are we talking about? When children go to institutional care, it's because they need specialized services. You don't go to a brain surgeon for rheumatism, to somebody who can cure. You go, that's specialized services. We need to stop blaming the victims and acknowledge that maybe we need to recheck and evaluate some of our responses. So the rights of the child is not just, it's more than an idea. Yeah. It's action-based. And I think of late, and I agree with you there, that of late, we are not even hearing that as a conversation. Because really we have little to account to show that is directional in the rights base of children. The rights base of children cross-cuts our society. Yeah. And the kids at the youth hostel have no more or no less rights than every other child. Mm-hmm. So we need to stop playing the games of the language and instead really start to show that this is what we're upholding. And I think there is a lot to be desired when we think about it that way. It's not just talk, but it's about action. It's what are we doing. I think some of the biggest proponents to rights-based of children are pretty much mute. They're silent as of late, so.
Well, I think that also requires, I guess, just piggybacking off of your question, is that, it requires a whole change in mentality, right? Because, as you rightly said earlier, people think in terms of, they think in terms of punishment immediately, they think wrong punishment, especially children acting up, and then you hear comments like, send them to BDF first, let them do something, or, or like what Marlene said, that children have too much rights. How then do we make that shift, in terms of educating people, that, it's more than just language, as you say?
Well, it's not how we do it. I think we need to hear from the authorities that have some responsibility to do this, instead of just some bureaucratic outfit that purports or should be doing this. They need to be out there. Rights-based shouldn't be cyclical. Rights-based must be continuous, on the ground, doing this, championing this. But really it boils down to an absence of checks, of balances, of calling people to account. And I think the minute that starts to happen, then rights-based, we can just, it's like smoke, it will just go away, but the real education is to hold those bodies accountable, to do what they need to be doing, and to call it what it is, because you're either doing it or not doing it.
No, you're a trained social worker, you are an educator, you're helping to educate the up-and-coming social workers as well, to really get into the field and work in some level of assisting in developing our community. When you say children who come in conflict with the law are victims, that's not something I think that people draw as a parallel very often. Mm-hmm. You see someone who comes in conflict with the law as a perpetrator, somebody who has broken the law, and if it's a crime against another person, then the other person is the victim. Mm-hmm. How do you bring these two ideas together?
Well, it's not easy to do, but it's sensitization, it's understanding. It's understanding that to make a person, a whole person, a functioning individual, it takes years, it takes investment, it takes many things happening. Now you have to understand about the power that a young person or a child might have in comparison to some older persons. So really the persons that fall victim to something going wrong in their lives is usually with the less powerful, which in many respects also we can think about that kind of like in poverty. You're very young, you're 2-3 years old, formative years, you have very little power to dictate what happens to you in your formative years. So we need to be sensitive to that and then hold including ourselves, those that probably have that power and control and authority to take care of, and we can see this in the sense of families. It's a revolving cycle, you know. It's a revolving cycle. Poor kids, these families, they end up growing up, they end up having their own kids. It becomes a revolving cycle. And somehow if you look at, well, this will never end. Well, I don't know if it will ever end, but we need to hold ourselves accountable for what is the role I am playing.
Yeah.
So in promoting social work education and really trying to put out the best workers out there. I am not worried about the education piece. I think the universities do a fair good job. I am worried about the climate in which these young professionals will go in and work. I think we have come, we're living in a time when they will be facing probably more institutional and systemic challenges more so than the client themselves. It's like you need to swim across this ocean, but you better have the strength alone. There's no life jacket, there's no little vessel to help you. It's an enormous job. So I think ultimately my main concern with young social workers getting in there is the climate that they'll have to navigate in. Yeah. I think it's one that it's pretty obscure, it's not very supportive, it's not very nurturing, and if you're not careful, the social work field quickly breaks you down as a human, as a person, because all you're seeing is human suffering and pain. Yeah. That's what you see and that's what you face. So,
and it's no secret. I mean, we've spoken to representatives from the human services, and they talk of the work that they do and the different levels of intervention that they have to make. And I think Belize is no different from many other places where we are seeing a large amount of caseload for an individual social worker, which really shouldn't be the case.
And it's not a secret. I mean, what do you do? For example, somebody has asked and repeatedly over, and I had the opportunity to work in this state. We can't compare ourselves to there in terms of caseload or those kinds of things. Yeah. It wouldn't work. But I think everybody will agree. Well, maybe there are a few persons that will not, that the burden, the caseloads are extremely high. Yeah. It's practically impossible to, when you hear some of these things, if the information is true, anytime you have a caseload of even 30 or 40, you are talking numbers, you're talking failure. That's what will happen. But at the end of that, who is failing? It's the very clients. It's the very people that we are supposed to serve. They fail, and it's not the worker, The worker might face another failure in terms of guilt and shame and all these things that we suffer when we're pushed to do things that maybe we can't do or shouldn't be doing, and you're crossing checks. But what's the end? In the end, fair enough. Certain different social workers can have different caseloads. Case management kind of things. You're looking at the highest, maybe 20, 25 cases. I don't know what is for real. What is the real number? But to do effective work, you must have manageable caseload. So, but that's they're the best ones to tell you that. But I can just see if the systems continue to push you in directions that you can't do it, then ultimately the end result will be simple. It's failure all around. Burnt out social workers, disillusioned, unhappy. If you are not waking up every day,
client who doesn't get assistance, most importantly.
Of course.
And what, in your experience as a social worker, do you think makes maybe the biggest difference in terms of when you actually do intervene in, like, let's say a home that where there is abuse, where there is neglect, or for one of these children who actually does end up in the institution? What makes a difference so that there can be a positive outcome?
Maybe this is not a secret, but if it is, let me share it. It's relationships. The social worker must be the kind of natured person to be very confident in himself or herself, to be able to establish good, caring, helpful relationships. If that doesn't happen for whatever reasons, if I have my own issues and I can't, if I am maybe overly zealous, if I am overzealous of being respected, those kinds of things, you can't establish that relationship. It's relationships that will make the change. So you assuming and taking the responsibility as the adult, looking at the person. Like, for example, why should someone respect you? Why should a child in care respect you? Just because? No. These children have a history of abuse and neglect. Why should they respect anyone? Mm-hmm. It's up to you to use your skills and the knowledge that you have to make that connection, and then you will see change. You know, I had the great fortune or misfortune, whatever you can say, that I live with many of the people I work with. They were in my house. So there is, you can't be playing with the idea of social work. You live and breathe social work practice, because these are strangers coming in to live with you. Yeah. So social work was not just an academic idea. Yeah. You have to live that for it to work. Relationship still makes the biggest switch. You being able to link, to care, and that is where the connection happens. And then these people become available to be helped, because they will reject it, of course. They have been failed and they have been rejected and abused. Why should they trust anybody else?
It's such a complex problem, because, as I hear you speak, and I think, we have not talked very much about rehabilitation of children who do come in conflict with the law, and looking at the type of care that they're receiving. We know we get reports of people running away from hostel, and I think that's all par for the course, naturally, but also looking at what is actually taking place and how it's helping. But I can't help to think that perhaps all this focus on what the state is or maybe isn't providing is still removing one of the most critical roles, which is parents.
Of course, and I think that has been recognized a long time. What happens after, what happens during, what happens in the process of rehabilitation. Yeah, what happens before, and institutional care should be the last. I mean, anybody that knows anything about the rights of the child would know that the idea of putting children at the institution because of behavioral problems was something undesired, was something that they were thinking about.
It's worst case scenario.
So, because really, let me just say this, if parents don't know this, this is no secret. If you place your child in any institutional care, the risk for things going bad for your child becomes very high. I don't care what institution it is. It's just a fact of what we know happens. It's way better if you're having a child with behavioral problems to maybe get the help at home in your community with the people that can to help you make that change. The minute people step into institutional care, the data is very clear around the world that things can go wrong for that child very quickly.
Yeah.
We need to be aware. So it's a last option resource. You don't just put them there. Mm-hmm. But Marlene, by no stretch, this is hard work. Yeah. This is hard work. My heart goes out to people that do this. Yeah. And people have to be accountable as well. It's hard work. They need to be supported. They need to have the tools to be able to do this. So many times when things go wrong, it's probably human error. But at least it's my guess that many things have gone wrong, and it's probably systemic error. It's the systems that have missed the ball, missed the game, But we don't know in the absence of maybe the coroner's inquest, which was, I think, ordered. I don't know if that was a joke or so. But did that happen? Mm-hmm. Or was it reported wrong? I think I read it in the newspaper or something. But if that was ordered to be done and it wasn't done, then it's a joke. It's a joke on all of us,
So, I feel that there has to be some sort of action that can be taken if we're talking about mitigating the situation where children even come in conflict with the law. We have the Human Services Department, the people who will go into homes, check in if there's a report made, or if they're aware of a situation where a child is not living in an ideal situation. But is it that we need to support parents more? When we hear, and like I say, I think people always go back to messages that we'd moved past, and so everybody starts saying, oh, it's because the village isn't involved in raising the child anymore. And I think they take it very literal, like, your neighbor, your whole community. But is it a lack of support for parents? Is it a lack of parenting skills? Is it the outcome of people facing very serious poverty issues?
Well, it's complex. It's very dynamic. When you think about that, you start to wonder, well, where do we start to prevent this? Well, let me put it out there. We could never have a situation where there will be no need for children in institutional care. That's wishful thinking.
Okay.
For whatever reasons, let me coin this way, because we start to play with ideas of, yes, prevention is key. How many kids is acceptable to pass through an institution in a population of 380,000? What is an acceptable number? So we start from there, taking kind of a stock off. And then the ones that come in, what care are they receiving? It's numbers you're talking about. But yes, there is responsibility across parents. It's very rare that just knowingly a parent will want to hurt their kids. Now, there are cultural practices which it's intentional and purposeful, maybe because of not knowing or whatever. We do this. And the idea of lashing or these kinds of things, well, we know. And we try to retrain kids. Right now, there is a big idea of early childhood stimulation, children 0 to 3. Powerful. The data is coming out. I mean, we can miss windows of opportunities. Yeah. And many times parents don't know this, So we're trying to do what we can. Yes, there is need for sensitization. Yes, it's parents that hurt their kids. They're setting up this. But many times it's not willful. Many times they just don't know. They just don't know or have the inability. So yes, there is responsibility throughout. But it still begs the question, what levels are tolerable or acceptable? And that those are kinds of the accounting that we have to start doing. I mean, how many people are living in poverty? Poor people do things that otherwise they probably wouldn't, But what level is acceptable for a little country like us, for a little economy like us? Yeah. I mean, where do we are? I mean, even with that figure, to be honest with you, you have all kinds of numbers, and the estimates that are there, it's estimates or so. I think in your show the other day, the people from the statistical, which is a great thing, that needed to be done, but it's being done finally. Yeah. That will provide some good information there. So Marlene, it's complex. I think you have to hold people accountable at the different points. If a parent is in need of support, then are they receiving the support, the quality, the caliber of the support to do that? So you take that. So if I have one parent that I'm working with or one family, then I should be able to be doing certain things. Some go through in terms of the children falling through, the people at the institution. You take stock of that as well. You can't blame the victims because maybe we have failed in certain areas. You have to take stock of what you're doing, when you're doing it, and where you're doing it. Do we need more response workers? Well, I can just guess. I would say maybe yes, given the numbers. Then who you hold responsible for that? Should I expect that you all should do much more double, triple work with less? Then who takes responsibility for that? So that becomes the accounting that you start to do. Yeah. Who is to be doing what? Because the minute you start to push people and the work and the hours and all of these things, that we're just human beings, we will crack. Mistakes happen and it costs us,
Now, how do you, in looking at the overall situation, and I appreciate what you're saying, that, parents have a role to play and perhaps are not willfully neglecting the children in any particular form. But the fact is that it does happen.
It does. It does.
And kind of the situational reasons, they go to school, they have behavioral problem, they're struggling getting through. Maybe they even have a learning challenge and they don't know.
Absolutely.
Can't make it through school, get to the mandatory 14, no longer progresses from there, starts to come in conflict with the law, or starts getting recruited by gangs, and it just snowballs. when that child who, when we saw them at 7 years old, thought, oh, poor baby, we wish there could be better for him. 10 years later, when that child becomes a perpetrator of a crime, we forget that 7-year-old that we had empathy for or sympathy for. How would you encourage people to still be able to see things through that light? And we have to be very real here, because so many people have been impacted by crime that it's even harder to imagine what that child may have been through, especially because of what they put me or my loved ones through.
Yeah, it's just that revolving door, and it's hard to, unless you're in that shoe, to to feel one way or the next. Of course, I'm in a helping profession, but that doesn't mean that can change if something was to happen to you.
Yeah.
I always think probably I'll die from a gunshot, and maybe it will be the very same person that I tried to help. That's just the reality. This can happen. It's very real. It's hard to do. It takes a higher awareness. It takes almost I would even say it's a revelation. It really just taking stock of how life is, and we must come up to that level. Yeah. We must come up to the level of care. While you can have a terrible view of that 14-year-old who did such a thing, collectively, socially, state-wise, we must have a different view. If the state has this view, then dog has eaten our lunch. You have a right to feel how you feel about a certain situation, but the collective think tank can't be equal to that idea. And I think that's where we fail. I mean, you have individuals at all different levels have these views, and just I hope that they're not reflecting the collective thinking of us as a people, because then that's a thing. So I don't know what we could do except to say that education and holding people accountable. And you are entitled to your view and opinion, but the state must have a different view and opinion.
The state must focus on rehabilitation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, how is it, or how do you find then the reaction, or how proactive do you think the state is currently being in addressing these situations?
Which you mean in terms of the social climate,
yes,
the kids, or so?
Or maybe just in terms of the institutions even getting there.
Yeah, let me narrow that down, because
yeah, because that's a huge.
Yeah, it's a huge thing, and only God knows how we'll answer that one. But let me say this. I can just draw some reference to when I was there, because I was there. Let's say institution. I remember the many activities, the calendar of activities we had. And this can be proven or tested or verified.
Yeah.
At the youth hostel, we had an entire program of activities. That program intensified over the weekends. In the summer, the kids that were there, we went on 1 week-long summer camps. Took them all parts of this country. It's exposure. You're trying to keep them busy, your staff and their families. Everybody went. It's like one. So we used to do that. No, I don't know. That still needs to happen. I remember, God rest his soul, Andy Palacio, we would call him, and I think he was affiliated with Nietzsche. He said, here, Fermin, we have so many tickets. Every kid at the youth hostel will go to the Festival of the Arts. As a matter of fact, some years later, they participated in the Festival of the Arts. Well, that needs to continue to happen. Engage the population into those activities. They're young persons. They're no different. I still think they go to school and go to high school and transported and all of those things. I say I don't even know how I got into that, but let me tell you, if that is not happening for whatever reason, either there is the finance or the ideas to do it, then we have failed. These kids need to be continuously engaged. What should not be happening is repression, loss of more freedom, and participation. The more you lock up someone, the worse they become internal. I want to think that the flares that we see is because of maybe we need to be, what in what activities are they involved in, including visiting homes. That should be a regular part of the rehabilitation program. No, I'm not saying that that is not happening. I don't even want to say I know what happens.
But you're saying they're essential parts of...
I can just tell you that these kinds of thinking and programs and activities is what makes the difference. It's not the repression and more lockup. So it takes a certain thinking at the institutional level in terms of the workforce to enable some of this. Is this work? You can imagine coming to the Festival of the Arts in the evening or so, or in the day whenever, you know, and busing these people. Of course, there's an expense.
So what do we collectively, as the wider community, perhaps what do we need to focus on? What do we need? Where can we put our efforts? I think there are a lot more people in this society who want to do something to help rather than have the constant criticisms that we hear all the time.
Well, what I used to encourage is participation, community participation. Just about every church from Belmopan down this road, and I was invited to come in. When I say church group, to come and do things with the kids. On weekends, on Sundays, there were services happening, different denominations coming in. There were community persons who would come and pick up these to spend a Sunday with them, and I forgot what we call it. But we had the community involved. They're the ones that have resources and lots of things that can help with engaging these persons. So there was never an end to that. As a matter of fact, the regulation allows for magistrates and certain people, members of the house, to be visitors there. They're laced with a kind of responsibility to go and see what's happening. I don't know when that has. I'm not saying. I can tell you that when I was around, magistrates, judges used to make frequent visits to the youth hostel. Maybe it was a relationship we had, and they would tell you, for me, I drop in by, and I remember the late, God rest his soul, as well, Sir George Brown. He was one of the big proponents of community-based stuff. He made it his business to be there regularly, and not in a capacity to find what's wrong, but how can we help support. So there is room, but there must be a climate. You can't be secretive and having like some storehouse, and it needs to be open and transparent. We used to have a board of I forget what you call them, board of trustees or so for the youth hostel that helped the management, helped me that time as a supervisor there. Remember one time I was a physical supervisor at the youth hostel, just being there. That was the norm. The norm was community involvement. People came, got kids, took them home. Were there risks and stuff? Yes, there were risks. Could things have gone wrong? Yes, it could have gone wrong. Fortunately, it never did.
Okay.
So that is what we need, to get involved, open the doors for support, and I think maybe it can help with the rehabilitation, which is an enormous responsibility placed on people there.
That is a great way to close off this conversation as we put this issue into perspective. We appreciate you coming in and having this conversation with us. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, our focus is going to be on issues in the sugar industry. So please stay tuned.
I Belize and rum. Me say bartender, pour me a shot, out the best bottle what you got in your stock. But if I no Belize and rum, me no want none of that. So I best you put her right back. Me say pour me a shot, out the best liquor what you got in your stock. But if I no Belize and rum, me no want none of that. Me no want none of that, yo. I Belize and rum, I Belize and travelers Belize and rum. They want it right. The party now fit on now. And as me got the Belize and rum, I Belize and rum, travelers Belize and
welcome back to Open Your Eyes. If you're joining us now, we are now going to be talking about some issues affecting the sugar industry in the Caribbean. And we are currently joined by our Carl James, who is the SAC chairman, Mac McLachlan, who is the BSI SAC director, and Ray Martinez, who is the ASR regional commercial director. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
And thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
So, the first thing I guess we can talk about is the sugar stakeholders meetings, which one has taken place already. One is going to happen today. What are the biggest issues, I suppose, that have been discussed so far in terms of sugar, the future of the sugar industry?
Well, shall I kick off?
Sure.
Yeah. We started this journey 3 years ago with a sugar stakeholder meeting in Jamaica, where we were looking at changes in the dynamics of the global sugar market, and particularly the loss to us of the value of our traditional EU market. What's going to happen? Now, it's an ironic situation. We've said the same thing on this show before, that we produce around 500,000 tons of sugar for a demand of 300,000 in CARICOM, and we import 200,000 of refined sugar from outside the region, displacing the market opportunity for our sugars. And part of the reason is because of the type of sugar produced. In the CARICOM, we're correcting that with a lot of investment, moving up the value chain, producing food-grade sugar. The other reason is because the way the Common External Tariff is structured at the moment, it blunts the incentiveness for the kind of investments that are required. The reason for that is that traditionally there wasn't the ability to provide the market with white sugar that was required in some cases, and therefore there's a way of getting exemptions from the Common External Tariff to import extra regional white sugar. However, what we've been doing really in the main part of our job is to talk to manufacturers to say, what do you need? What kind of sugars do you want to do? We can provide whatever you want in whatever way, but what we do need in order to ensure we have an incentive for that investment is that when we can provide that sugar, that the Common External Tariff will apply to extra regional sugar coming into the region. Otherwise, what happens is you put a lot of investment in place, you produce the right kind of sugar, but when the world market price goes down, and it seems advantageous for industrial users of sugar to import extra regional sugar, which is effectively being dumped into the region, then that investment is worthless. So what we're saying is, look, we can provide a long-term security of supply, security of quality, security of everything that industrial users of sugar require. We're doing it, actually. We're putting the investment in. What we would like to see is a regulatory structure that supports that system. It's actually going to be better for everyone in the end, including industrial users of sugar and consumers, because we will be able to provide sugar over a longer term period of time that takes away the pricing volatility of the global market.
This is such an integral issue, and for many reasons. One, clearly because the survival of our agricultural sector is important to all of us, and that's locally in Belize. But there's also, I think when we look at the element of what this means for our regional integration process and how people view it and how effective it is for us. And that's where I want to get Carl in. I was very surprised yesterday. We saw the interview with our Minister of Agriculture, Honorable Godwin Hulse, and he said bluntly, he said, listen, if we're talking about a common market, but we're being shut out of the market, then what is the purpose?
Correct. And
this is not necessarily a great indicator for a movement that has been ongoing in the Caribbean for so long. Carl, talk to me, as the head of the SAC, just how have we not been able to make progress with this issue as yet?
I think because there has been a greater influence on the politicians by what we call the traders than the manufacturers. the Caribbean, whether we like it or not, is a combination of people who do trading than production. Now, the sugar market in the region is one of the oldest. Jamaica goes way back over 300 years. So the West Indies sugar people have been around from last century. However, most of the sugar that we had produced at that time was sent to the refinery in the US, UK, and then we'd buy back refined sugar. Up to 1997 in Jamaica, we were refining sugar. Later than that, we were refining sugar in Trinidad. However, because it was always, and Mark referred to it, cheaper to buy the residual sugar from the world market.
Which means leftover.
Leftover.
What they couldn't sell.
What they could not sell in arrangements and what they couldn't consume locally. And out of is nearly 200 million tons of sugar is produced. It's about 35 that is on the world market. And there's about 8, this is 8? Yeah. 8 countries who supply. The biggest one is Brazil, Thailand, Australia, India, not much export.
No, true.
India. Colombia, Guatemala, South Africa, name it, just about 8. So they put on the market what they can't sell, so the price is always depressed. And our guys, who, like what Maurice Bishop said, we are invoice technologists. we buy and sell. They guys buy. So instead of investing in a sugar industry that has a base that you can build on and employs people, is one of the most democratic industry you have in the Caribbean. From the cane cutter down there to all the people who work in maintaining the cane, to the factory, to the distribution, to transport. It's one of the most dynamic. And it's not only in Jamaica, it's the same across the country. However, the guys are prepared to invest their money in building warehouses for imports rather than building up our sugar industry. To give you an example, one American fellow, he's Mexican-American, invested in a liquid sugar factory in Trinidad, was producing and supplying the beverage industry. He had to close it last year. The manufacturers are not buying his liquid sugar because they can buy the residual sugar from the world market cheaper.
Yeah.
So I spoke to him before I came down here. He says, Carl, I can only go back into it if there is what we have been fighting for. That's a real issue. The CT must be in place that protects the local producer.
Yes.
I keep telling my Caribbean people over the years, the Caribbean is the only area in the world where you don't have a protection for the local market. Yeah. Just recently there's a big article on the African sugar industry where they say, listen, this market is for African producers. Ethiopia is expanding. Nigeria, gentleman down there that has invested, I forget how many, billions of dollars for our sugar industry in Nigeria, self-sufficiency, but they have a protection. You can't go in there with whatever you want. Caribbean is the only one, and we take it from anywhere.
No, I think our viewers have been hearing this issue for quite some time and trying to ensure that we can make it as understandable as possible. And when I think of, when you speak of a politician's perspective, you said it's more the politicians who perhaps are not interested in being able to implement the CET, which is the tax that should be levied on any import that's on sugar in this case, that's coming in from outside of the Caribbean.
Right.
Naturally, if I'm to think like a politician, like a decision maker in any country, I may be thinking, okay, if I purchase or if I allow for this tax to be implemented, it will drive up the cost of production from whatever it is locally that is using that sugar, which may drive up the cost of what they're able to sell for, which will impact my voters. Is that what we're seeing?
To be
Some
honest,
of that.
Well, to be honest, it's that could be a perception, but it's not actually a fact,
Reality.
because What we're talking about here is putting in place a regime that would encourage the investment needed to improve efficiencies in the industry, provide long-term pricing that would actually, and we've proven this in discussions with manufacturers, over the longer term period means that they would actually get sugar cheaper than they would if they were importing and utilizing refined
over a
white
long
sugar.
term.
Yeah, because when you buy refined sugar and import it, you're not just paying the price for the sugar. You have to freight, you've got to clear it, you've got to store it, you've got to utilize it, which often means melting it. Now, if all you were doing was melting regional sugar and making it the standard that you want for your beverage, we've worked out, even at today's depressed prices, that I think the utilization cost of both sugars will be more or less the same with the CET protected regional sugar. So over the long term period, we've proven that in the last 20 years, for 60% of the time, it would have been beneficial for industrial users of sugar to utilize regional sugar. The problem we have is the 40% of the time, because you know, what you need to have in place is something where you can produce the product, where you can supply it, it should be utilized. And the way of doing that is simply, and we have 3 simple asks this week of the COTED Agriculture Ministers on Friday. We have 3 simple asks. The first one is that we need to have a monitoring mechanism, a formal monitoring mechanism for sugar flows in the CARICOM, because as things stand, all kinds of different types of sugars are coming in to CARICOM, often utilizing waivers for white sugar, even if it's not white sugar. The second point is enforcement of the existing rules, including and importantly on brown sugar, which we all produce, but at the moment the value of that brown sugar market has been eroded dramatically because of the CET-free importation of brown sugar from other countries, which is completely against the rules and against the law. We estimate that for sugar producers we're losing something like $10 million US of value a year from the elimination of that market value. And the third thing we're asking for, and this is really important, the third thing is we're saying treat white sugar the same as you do brown. And all we're saying is put white sugar on something called the list of products that's ineligible for differentiated tariff treatment. What that means is that today it wouldn't change dramatically the system, because until sugar producers can produce the right quality of sugar, in whatever form that is, liquid sugar or refined sugar or whatever, then manufacturers could still receive waivers to the CET. But when sugar producers can produce that quality, if it's on the list, if white sugar's on the list of ineligible products, then the CET applies. And it's a very simple ask, the 3 things, very simple ask. And at a time in Belize in particularly, where we are suffering the worst drought we've had in the last 50 years, our farmers are suffering massive deterioration in their cane yields. It's going to be a very, very tough period of time. We, are appealing to COTED, which is the trade and agriculture body that looks after this industry, to take these issues seriously, because this is meaningful to a large section of Caribbean people, not just here, but in Guyana, in Jamaica, and elsewhere. I was shocked and surprised that we're having some difficulty, it seems, getting sugar on a COTED agenda at a time like this. Now, I know that government of Belize is working very hard to achieve that, but I think what we need to do is seriously look at this issue, take it seriously. We're taking it seriously as producers, and we're investing where we need to invest. We need the regulatory framework.
And you want to invest to produce
we already are, Manu. We already are. And the point there, I think, is we need the regulatory environment to keep up with what's actually happening on the ground. Just one further point, not manipulating the conversation, gents, but one further point I just wanted to make is we're having hugely constructive discussions with many of the major industrial users of sugar about the benefits of long-term supply of regional sugar at the right kind of quality, often if they need a higher quality than the excellent plantation white sugar we produce, it can be done through a very simple liquefaction process, clarification process.
Well, I'm glad you brought that point up, because that's the obvious next question, that perhaps these manufacturers don't want to purchase the sugar from within the Caribbean because perhaps it's not to a standard or quality that they are getting from these other major producers.
Yes. Ruby, do you want to explain some of our discussions recently?
The quality can be achieved. What Mac is talking about in reference to liquefaction or clarification would gap that. But there's also, going back to what Mac was talking about, taking whites and putting them on the list of ineligibles, same way that brown sugar is treated, would provide an atmosphere for further investment. And as Mac said, manufacturers would not be at all, they would continue to experience the same dynamic right now. If it's not produced within CARICOM to their quality specifications, they will still be able to import and bring waivers to the table. But that action of passing white sugar to the non-eligible list would provide an atmosphere of further investment for producers like ourselves to come up to the table and bring the quality that's required by the manufacturers. And I think that it's all about the single market. If it doesn't work for sugar, then it shouldn't work for anything.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I see it as the CARICOM citizens are the ones that lose out, because in a community, in a market where there's continued population growth, there has to be growth economically, there has to be industry vibrant that continues to grow and employ. That's part of the single market. You want to nourish from within. And you said earlier, it's very important for Belize itself on the agricultural landscape. I think it's important for the whole CARICOM community, because we have to see it as one. Every country has agricultural independence to one extent, and it's very important to not, give your back to the agriculture industry. You should be inclusive of them.
I think that brings up something important, because when Mac spoke about the things that you are asking for, yes, those things would provide for greater protection in the industry locally. But the question also is there room for expansion of this industry, going forward, especially when we have the issues that are, becoming more, let's say, burdensome because of the world market, and where does it lead, or where will it lead the industry in the future?
I mean, the world market is a dump market. Okay, so we've explained it's a residual market where people sell their sugar in their own country, in their own region, at high prices, and whatever's left goes into the world market. Nevertheless, the world market is also a cyclical market, and you look back over hundreds of years and you'll see that the cycles go up and down, probably once every 7 years or so, 5 to 7 years. And you end up looking at a situation at the moment, the price of sugar is very low because there's been a large surplus in the global market for various reasons for a number of years. We're expecting that surplus to change into deficit next year. That there's still stocks to use up, so it won't have a major impact on the price just now, but in the next couple of years you'll see that price going up. Now, what we're saying to manufacturers, this is a really important point, because in 2011 an industrial user of sugar was paying maybe $900 for a ton of sugar, which was the global market rate, which could have been provided at a much lower price than that from regional sugar. Today it's around $360, $380. So that shows the kind of fluctuation that manufacturers have to go through and have to manage. Now, I don't see many manufacturers going out of business on the basis of the sugar price going up like that. But why not embrace, as I believe many manufacturers are, the idea of utilizing your own product in your own region, where you can have long-term agreements on where that price should lie. And that basically, to answer your point, Gavin, because it's important, rather than ride the wave of something we don't control, which is a global sugar market, which is completely distorted in many ways, let's seize what we do control, both as manufacturers and sugar producers, and come together and work, as Rui says, for this community, rather than looking at ways of circumventing working within this community. And what's crucial to this is we all agree. We all agree in the end. We've had some very fruitful discussions with many, many industrial users. Belize is a beautiful example where all the manufacturing utilizes Belizean product. We're proud of it. We're proud of the quality. We've kept improving the quality. And we're proud of providing that product.
Just to be clear, because the regulations are in place, it allows for this to take place. And
Correct.
that's kind of what you were trying to attempt to do or to achieve in CARICOM itself.
But more important, it works.
Yeah.
We were discussing yesterday in Sugar Stakeholder Meeting that, the investments that have been made, where they have been made, have repaid themselves many times over.
Yeah.
So, this is what we understand as business people is this has to be a win-win situation for everybody. So a win-win for sugar producers to get the incentive to continue to invest, win-win for manufacturers who won't be disadvantaged over the long term.
Win-win for the CARICOM.
Importantly for the CARICOM and the Caribbean citizens, and not just, people who consume, which are a large range of products that have sugar in them, but also for our cane farmers, for the whole industry, which is hugely important to countries like Belize, Guyana, Jamaica.
I suppose the sticking issue is it's not that trade has failed in the region. There are some products going out from Belize and from within the rest of the region itself. My question it keeps on lingering. Why are we not able to move forward on the issue of sugar? And so there's some points I want to clarify. What's the biggest market that we're hoping to get into?
Well,
right now?
Yeah.
The Caribbean.
Yeah, I know, but which one of the islands?
Well,
Trinidad.
Jamaica has the largest market. Trinidad has a large market. Just collectively, as we said, there's a 200,000 ton market opportunity from extra-regional
for
sugar.
refined sugar.
For refined sugar.
But the brown sugar,
which you can be able and want to be able to provide, from what I'm hearing.
Yes.
So, I'm going back to the whole essence of what CARICOM was established to do. And there were differentiations made from the beginning. There was a recognition that there were some islands and countries, we should say, because we're not an island, that were more developed, and there were some that were smaller and still developing. And within that agreement itself, there are a lot of accommodations made to recognize that we will help each other. You big developed nation like Trinidad, Jamaica, will perhaps be exempt from certain benefits. Small island developing states will be allowed for additional benefits, building on this idea of a united region. So when we, one of the small island developing states, have a product, want to sell it, can help our economy, hopefully one day move us out of this category of small island developing state, can't access one of the larger developed states. I'm just really having a hard time, just as a regular person that knows the basics about how our integration and process is supposed to work, as to why we're not able to get ahead. And you said you're having challenges even getting it on the agenda to be discussed?
Well, we're hoping it's on the agenda. But the point here is that we didn't invent the common external tariff. I mean, the common external tariff is established. It's well established. It's been there for a long time. It's very clear, in my view, at the end of the day, if the product's available, it should be utilized.
Yeah.
I'll just break it down to that.
Some years ago, we had a stakeholders meeting in Trinidad. And the suggestion was put forward that Trinidad has this massive supply of cheap energy. And we proposed that we put up a refinery in Trinidad with Jamaica, Guyana, and Belize supplying the raw material, brown sugar, that would provide all the refined sugar that the region needs plus, and we would do it. The politician at the time in Trinidad jumped at it. So I figured that makes sense. The guys in Jamaica thought it was a good idea. However, it never moved. What we have now is that Trinidad, who had a small refinery at the time, I used to buy refined sugar from Trinidad. Trinidad decided that they didn't want a two-tier economy, one supported by oil and one supported by sugar. But I had to go to the current Minister of Agriculture and point out to him that I'm not sure, I can't criticize the decision, just to say, think of it again. Some of the largest sugar refiners in the world don't grow one blade of cane, but they have wealth of oil. So all these oil producing countries are some of the largest refineries, because they use the cheap energy to do it and then you supply. So I said, just think of it. But you see what happened to us in the Caribbean? No, we figure that is one or the other. And we are saying right now with sugar, which it should be for everybody. When you, for instance, one of the things we are pushing is that you need to have sugar that you can send throughout the world. We don't, most of what we are doing right now is producing sugar for the refinery. We say we need to move beyond that.
Yeah.
We need to do the branding. For instance, Jamaica has one that we call Jamaica Gold brand. I went to Grand Cayman. It was an eye-opener. I went to Grand Cayman. They do nothing but packaged sugar, branded sugar. And I saw sugar in there from Zambia. I said, no, can't be. I said, yes, from Zambia. So I realized that if you do the value added, you have the freedom to move it anywhere in the world. And our tourist industry can be one of the biggest help to spread it out, because each tourist coming here leave with a package of your Belizean special, Demerara from Guyana, Jamaica Gold from Jamaica. It's one way of benefiting from that. So the other thing that we have introduced, let me tell you, Marcos pointing out to this, we're saying that it's not just buy and sell sugar. We can have an industry that really is as developed as anything. So a guy wants 100,000 tons of sugar this year. We sit down with him from the start. We say, okay, fine, tell us when you want it, how you want it, and we agree on a price. Also, we have had to deal with the business of currency. Some people can't find the US dollar to buy for the sugar, so talk to the commercial banks. They say, okay, fine, we will facilitate the trade. Somebody has to pay like a premium, but we facilitate. So all those are being put on the table right now for a sugar trade industry. Sugar industry in the trading in the region that encompasses every aspect of it. It's not just, okay, put on the season and that. No. We are able to do what other trading.
So you're not looking at just an ad hoc solution to this issue now. You want to develop something long term. It's important to point out that this conversation didn't just start, right? We knew the access to the European market was going to end, and we knew definitively in 2017. My question is, did the conversation start from then? Did we start trying, because it was important for all of us to find new markets to access before 2017 came to a close?
It's interesting actually, Marlene, the issue of the CET and sugar has been on the coated agenda for decades, actually. Now, I think certainly it's like that situation where you're standing on a bridge, and when it starts burning, suddenly you figure you've got to get off that bridge pretty quickly. So, certainly the conversation has accelerated. It's been a healthy conversation, largely because, we went to COTED 2 years ago now with a blueprint for what we're talking about. Mr. Samuda, the then Minister of Agriculture of Jamaica, quite rightly said, guys, cart before the horse. Go talk to the manufacturers, to the industrial users of sugar, come up with an agreement, bring it back to COTED, we will pass it. That's exactly what we've done. We've spent 2 years talking to industrial users. Not everyone's on board. but the vast majority see the benefit of utilizing regional sugar, particularly in liquid sugar form, which is beneficial for their processes. And here we are coming towards what we would hope will be a conclusion at the COTED Trade Ministers meeting in November. And I'm grateful that Government of Belize have indicated to us that they want to make sure that this is concluded at that point in time. We don't.
Just to interject, you were talking about talking to the manufacturers and they're on board. Manufacturers that currently are able to access and to get benefit from the single market for their final product as well. It's nothing different than what.
Yeah.
I mean, we had this discussion at the stakeholder meeting yesterday that beverage companies already have a CET protection of 20% on their products to protect them from other extra-regional imports. You know, maybe if they're looking at impacts of sugar pricing, that maybe needs to go up a little. I don't know. But the point behind all of this is that CARICOM sugar producers can provide sugar without the CET. Okay? All we're suggesting is that if we can provide that quality sugar, the other ones who want to bring it in should pay the CET.
And what we also want to provide is to eliminate or mitigate the world market price risk and volatility. Because we would be able to provide
bring a level of stability.
Exactly.
So we're hoping a number of things. You know, that this monitoring mechanism gets approved urgently and quickly. That's important. There's no point having any form of CET or anything else if it's not monitored. And secondly, the enforcement of the rules as they exist today, particularly on brown sugar, which all of our markets are losing out in value at the moment. And thirdly, that to encourage and incentivize this investment, that you know, when that product is made and can be provided, that the CET applies. And all of those things can be done, we believe, within the next few months.
That's a hope.
Once there is agreement on this issue. Now, you had your stakeholders meeting yesterday, and just in interest of being able and maximizing the time, there is another meeting taking place on Friday, you said?
Well, there are
two
two further meetings. There's a sugar ministers meeting today, which will consider the outcomes from the meeting yesterday. Then there's a COTED agriculture meeting, which covers all agricultural issues on the Friday.
Yeah. And then COTED, the actual COTED meeting takes place in November.
There are two different COTED meetings. One is agriculture, one is trade. The one on Friday is agriculture here in Belize. The trade COTED will take place in Guyana in November.
Yeah. So what you've indicated is that the last time you attempted to bring this issue to COTED, you were told, kind of go back and do your homework. Make sure the manufacturers are on board.
Yes.
So you went back and you did your homework. You talked to the manufacturers.
Yes.
Clearly saying, maybe we don't have 100% buying, but we have sufficient buying to know that the market is interested in welcoming us at the prices and the stability and all the other things we're offering. How optimistic are you that 2019 will be the year that we can break through on this issue?
One additional point is certainly $30 million investment in BSI to increase value added, $10 million investment in Gaisuco to produce white sugar, $250 million investment in a sugar mill, an additional sugar mill here in Belize that can provide added value sugar. So all of that time we've been building up the product, and we've been building up the argument, if you like, in that sense. You know, if people are listening to the real arguments here, if people are really considering the future that we've talked about this morning of the CARICOM, of the community, of the single market, I would like to be optimistic that we can achieve real progress this year. And that certainly the 3 points we've set out I think are achievable. I think there will need to be political agreement, obviously, to those things. There will be some detractors, clearly, but it seems to make common sense to me on the basis of political and the pushing of the single market for Caribbean citizens and all the livelihoods it will protect, for economic advantage for everyone. And at the end of the day, it just kind of makes sense that you have an agricultural industry that you're encouraging rather than one you're pushing out of business.
And Mr. Holt's approach has given me a lot of hope that things will happen, because Ministers who are not committed tend to waffle. He's not waffling. He's very committed that it has happened this year. And I'm giving him all the support, and I'm putting my hat on him leading the charge. Yeah. Plus he has the gentleman from the minister from
Mr. Holder.
Mr. Holder from Guyana. He has Mr. Hutchinson from Jamaica.
Yeah.
I expect that those guys will make sure, for the benefit of their industry and the overall Caribbean, that it works.
He also has the support of the minister from Barbados.
Barbados,
yeah. Especially with Prime Minister Barbados being such an advocate for the single market and the success of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we continue to stay tuned.
Thank you.
That's what we'll do. Keep us updated. I think it is a very critical issue. It's complex. But once we bring it down to just essentially coming back to one, survival of us as Caribbean people and the industries we do have, and moving towards an actual integrated single market. But thank you for coming in, and best of luck.
Thank both of you. Lovely to see you.
All right. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about an upcoming job fair at Transparent BPO. So please stay tuned. We are back and we're moving into our final segment for today. If you are looking for a job, want to change your jobs, you definitely want to pay attention because Transparent BPO is hiring. And here to tell us all about their upcoming job fair, we have Audrey Enriquez, who's the recruiting manager for Transparent BPO.
Good morning.
We have Mark Wagner, who is one of the team leaders at Transparent BPO. And we have Anna Acosta, who's the senior operations manager
Good
at
morning,
Transparent
everybody.
BPO. Good morning.
Good morning.
Looking for people to hire again, man. Things are growing.
It's definitely.
Yeah.
It's that time of year again at Transparent BPO where we are heading when it comes to our ramp season.
Yeah.
And so since America, they're getting ready for the holidays, of course. This is a time where some of our programs, they spike when it comes to their employees. And so just for the month of October and November alone, we are hiring over 250 workers. So hence the reason why we are having this job fair on Saturday, which will be at our Coney Drive location to really capitalize on these applicants.
Yeah. So you're our close neighbors here, but you also have your brand new offices that are being built on Philip Goldson. I want to say Northern Philip Goldson Highway.
Yeah, we recently actually opened that site. It's called the Seaside. It's now fully blown with about 500 seats there.
Yeah.
We have 3 program stations at that building, so we're excited about this new venture.
Yeah. This type of growth clearly shows, because it's not like you're moving offices, you're expanding.
Yes.
It shows that there are more and more people who are involved and getting on board. Let's get Mark in here about your own journey at Transparent BPO.
Okay. Morning again, everybody. I actually been at Transparent BPO now going on about 4 years. I started as an agent, like everyone else mostly. I moved in after a year into a mentor role, like assisting onboarding new hires, like during ramp-up seasons, like what we're talking about today. Gradually, I moved into training a little bit, seasonal training, also during the ramp-up season. And after a little leadership training development that I went through with Transparent BPO, I moved into a team leader role, which I am at right now.
Yeah. Now, tell me, because who you'll be talking to is who Mark was 4 years ago when he thought, maybe I'll give Transparent BPO a try. And we know a lot of people have reservations sometimes. If they're looking for a job, they'll go for anything. But some people are saying, I don't know if the schedule's going to work for me. I don't know many things. Take me back to that time and why this was a viable option for you.
Well, first of all, of course, it can pay my bills. So, of course, that made it an option, of course, number one. 2, I worked at a previous call center before, and I liked what I was seeing from the BPO workers while I worked at that call center. The call center actually ended up closing down, and BPO was still hiring. So I actually applied here with the mind state knowing that they had a level of stability, which now is proven to be a fact, right? It was still up and running. So that was the main thing that attracted me, was the level of stability. And just seeing the workers on the street, the way they carry themselves sometimes, they always have their uniforms on, their shirts tucked in. I just wanted to be a part of it, to be honest.
And what you just highlighted, I think, is one of the critical points, which is there's upward mobility.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
There's always room for growth within the company. They shoot out emails to apply for different positions, probably on a daily to weekly basis.
Right.
So, with all this expansion that's taking place, what types of jobs maybe is Transparent BPO looking for?
So we are very diverse. We have customer service, of course, outbound, which is Mark's world, tech support, chat support. So it's very diverse. So if you don't like being on the phones, you don't want to talk to people, you can always support them via chat, technical support, like I've mentioned. So it's diverse.
Yeah, so there's a wide range of skill sets perhaps that the company is looking for.
Definitely. I mean, for most people, when they think about call center, they think about only sales. You have to be pitching to people and you're going to be rejected. But actually at our company, we look for individuals that are interested in doing sales. We also have customer service, so you don't have to be pitching to a customer. You'll just be assisting customers with their needs, of course. And then we have programs like our data entry program where you'll be filling out insurance claims and stuff like that. Other than our agent posts that we have available, we also have management posts that that are available at this time as well. Recently, we had things from HR manager posts to recruiting managers and even site directors that were also available. So again, like you made mention, as long as you're seeing upward, expansion, there's always upward mobility. Again, we normally promote from within, of course, but whenever there's a post available and we see outsiders, they have the skill sets and the experience, of course, we're always looking to expand our company and build our brand. So definitely we would invite them in as well.
So then, I guess the next question is, what are you looking for in transparent BPO employee? What type, somebody enthusiastic, somebody committed, who fits the profile?
Well, definitely from the outside coming in, two things mainly we look for. We look for individuals that have will and skill. And of course, the skill set would be that, you can speak English, of course, because you'll be speaking to Americans. You have to have basic computer skills, of course. And everything else when it comes to the skill set, you will be taught during the training process. But of course, we need individuals that have the will, that they're willing to come in every single day. They're willing to learn. They're open to constructive criticism and willing to adapt to our culture. And as long as you have those two attributes, definitely you would be a fit for our company. We could work with you.
I think in addition to that, every program that we have has a specific profile that we must meet. So when a person comes in and applies for a job, there's a profile, and we, when they take a test, we link them with the program that they're most suitable for.
And when it comes to the skill too, there's always a guidance or support to get you where you need to be, even if you may not be as savvy in the area that we need you to be to, right?
So you want to be trainable. That's one of the key things that I hear as well. Because I always think that's a fear. Gavin's right. What skill sets are you going to need? If you say, see, I'm the opposite. I don't think of sales. I wouldn't want to do customer service. It's like somebody unhappy with a service and you try to make them happy again. But you provide all this information and kind of the do's and don'ts for people, right?
Definitely. And really it starts with the whole testing process that we have. Of course, after an applicant, they send in their application and they go through the screening process. We have 2 sets of tests that they go through. And the last test that they take would be a personality test. And it really tells us the individuals that are more introverted, the individuals that they're more detail-oriented. And based on those test scores that we receive, we're best able to fit them into the different programs that we have available. That way they're able to come in and really grow and develop within those roles because it actually fits their personality.
So how many jobs are you looking to fill at this upcoming job fair?
Hundreds, actually. Like I mentioned at the beginning, for just the month of October and November, we're looking to hire over 250 employees. And when we're looking at a long-term basis, we are planning to have over 2,000 steady workers. So we really want to we want to provide job opportunities for over 2,000 Belizeans, of course. So there's definitely a lot of posts available. There's a lot of room for growth and development, definitely when you come aboard our Transparent BPO team.
And the current call is mostly for agents, you said? And a few managerial positions?
Yes, we're always hiring agents, definitely.
Okay. And the sales, the current products that you'll be working with are sales and customer service?
Data entry and technical support as well. Those are the 4.
Now, at your job fairs, you usually see quite a number of people come out, right?
Yes. The last job fair that we had last year, we had over 250 people that came in that day, and we hired over 175 workers. So it was a great success for us. So again, we'd like to invite everyone to come out on Saturday from the hours of 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. It will be at our location that is on Coney Drive. If you are 18 years or older, you either have a high school diploma or equivalent work experience, and of course you have the will to adapt to our culture and learn, definitely Transparent BPO would be the route to go. Again, on Saturday from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at our Coney Drive location.
What do I have to bring?
So bring along your resume, a copy of your social security card, and either the receipt or a copy of your police record. If you do have a high school diploma, you can bring that in as well.
Now, what happens if I do have something on my police record? I mean, that's always something that if I see that as a requirement, I may not even try to apply.
So when it comes to the police record, it's really to protect us as well as our clients. We want to assure that the individuals that we're bringing into our company, that our employees would always be safe. And that we're also protecting, again, our clients, because it's sensitive information that we deal with on a daily basis. And so it's a must that you guys have a a clean police record, again, to protect our business as well as our employees and yourself, of course.
And given that the company has expanded so much, recently, and you're looking to hire, hundreds more people, what is, I think you used the term the transparent BPO culture. What is it like? What's the workplace, like with, so many people? What's the experience working for BPO like?
So it's different. I think every single call floor has its own culture. Overall, I think it's very exciting. When we hear a call center, a lot of people think it's just a walk in and walk out, you punch in, you punch out. That's different with our culture. We have a lot of activities that happen on a daily basis. Or for example, in September, we have an array of different activities. It's a lot more, I think, on the outbound side of the call center world. It's a lot more fun, I would say.
Yeah, it is. For instance, like for example, our call floor, the one that I work on, we usually have music going on. We usually have games that we're playing because it's pretty competitive, right? It's sales driven, so it's pretty upbeat to say the least. It's a really upbeat call.
And of course, we try our best to create a work-life balance with our employees. And like Anna mentioned earlier, we're always having activities for our employees. Every quarter, we have this initiative that we do call a mixer, where we have all our employees. They come together. We have drinks, music, food and stuff, and everybody just gets to mingle. Every quarter also we have
This is not part of sales, right?
No. An entire company. And
I want to see the video of when someone won the car at the Christmas party, right?
Yes, 2 years ago for our annual Christmas holiday party, we gave away 3 vehicles to 3 employees. So, throughout the year.
As a raffle.
Yes,
it wasn't earned, it was a raffle.
No, it was a raffle. So throughout the year, we have various initiatives just to really create that work-life balance for our employees. And of course, have their families come in as well and just to enjoy the whole transparent BPO culture.
Yeah. I guess one of the ways to know how happy people are is your retention rate. I mean, are you seeing people coming to, maybe they come in thinking they're going to do a short time stint until they find something else, but then they actually stay. How often do you find that?
It's quite often, actually. Every single program has a different attrition rate. We run between 40 and 50%, which is relatively low in the call center world. There are some agents that would leave and next thing you know, they're right back. Because working for us is really fulfilling, in my opinion.
And as Anna mentioned too, when it comes to the whole attrition, it isn't the proof in our recruiting process, because on a daily basis we have former employees that that would come back. So yes, we do have employees that would leave Transparent BPO to try out other call centers or other fields of work, and they always come back to our company, and simply because of the culture that we have there.
If you look at tenure, I've been with the company for 9 years. We have some agents that have been with us 5+ years. So that explains it.
And to answer that too, like everyone, 80% maybe of the people who start say this is just for now.
Temporary.
Yeah.
And then you stay, like
eventually you see the room for growth, you see opportunities arise, and if you're a competitive person, it'll spark your interest in
All right. So is there a specific age requirement?
Yes, definitely. Applicants must be 18 years or older to seek employment at Transparent BPO.
18, high school degree or working equivalent, copy of your social security card, your resume, and a police record as well.
And if they do not have the police record, or if you don't have all your documents at hand for the job fair on Saturday, don't let that hinder you from coming out. Definitely still come, bring the documents that you do have. Just bear in mind that we would need you to get the other documents in as soon as possible.
And it is important that you talk about your different products, because even if I'm not an outgoing person, maybe I don't see myself doing sales or customer service, I could be doing something perhaps less interactive than that.
Yes, definitely, which would be more for our technical support and data entry. And we do not want anyone from outside the city to feel like, well, you know what, Transparent BPO is too far. I have to travel on a daily basis. Again, we do have our transport system. We have our buses that leave from Orange Walk and Belmopan on a daily basis, bring our employees to Belize City and take them back home. For employees that live within the city and they work the late shifts, we do have our vans that actually take our employees from work to the nearest point to their home, I should say.
Yeah.
So they don't have to worry about commuting within the city in late hours, of course. And for the people that live in Belmopan, just be very patient, because in Q1, early next year, we would have our location in Belmopan open as well. So they won't even have to worry about that commuting every single day.
Interesting. Okay. Anything else you want to say to people about why they should come out on Saturday?
Well, again, we just like to invite everyone to come out on Saturday from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at our Coney Drive location. We're looking for individuals that are interested in doing sales, customer service, data entry, and technical support. And of course, individuals who have managerial experience as well. They're welcome to come out on Saturday. And the proof is really in the pudding. There's only so much that we can say being employees of Transparent BPO. You guys could come into our company, get the whole Transparent BPO experience, and you could speak for yourself.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in and telling us all about the job fair. We hope that you'll have a lot of people coming out, and more people getting employment is always great. And most importantly, that you continue to keep them happy.
Definitely.
Yes. All right, we're going to go ahead and take that final break now. When we come back, we'll have our wrap up, so stay tuned. And we're back. Very interesting conversations today.
Yeah, I know. From the first segment we had when we were talking about, the at-risk children and those in conflict with the law, what we can do to, support our community and support these children who, end up in institutions or, are generally at risk. Of the old term falling by the wayside.
Yeah. No, I think it's important sometimes to take stock and remind ourselves that, that they're children. And there's a reason why your 16-year-old is graduating from high school and going to junior college or off to a college abroad, and not that 16-year-old who has a gun in their hand or is behind bars or in hostel. And when you kind of put that together, I think you start to realize that children are children.
Yeah.
And there's a lot we need to do from early on.
Yeah.
But also, if they reach the point of being in an institution, that we're doing enough when they're there.
Exactly.
So that doesn't become their way of life after that.
And afterwards, so that when they come out, that they're in a supportive enough environment.
Yeah.
But back to your point, the early intervention is the most critical thing, because for so many things or problems, as we say in society, prevention always better than cure.
Yeah. Precisely. So we do appreciate Furman coming in. And I do want to make clear that we've been attempting to get some of these institutions to come on the show to talk about just what's happening in the work that they do. We haven't been able to do that, but just to keep the conversation going, I think having someone who's had the experience to share it with us is important as well. And then the conversation with the representatives of the sugar stakeholders, I should say, ASR, BSI representatives, as well as the Sugar Association of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Such a critical conversation. And I think it's difficult to understand how this has been an issue and continues to be an issue. And it feels so personal for us because it's our sugar industry.
And I think, especially because the point was made that us in the Caribbean region, almost all of our countries have a history of sugar production.
Yeah.
Even nowadays, I think the latest figures are something like in the Caribbean region, over 400,000 people, their livelihoods depend directly on sugar production, the sugar industry. So it really is, as you say, a critical issue. The future of the industry is something that needs to be discussed, needs to be planned and managed, with, the utmost care and attention.
Yeah, there's something I don't like about the doublespeak of I think of, and I hate to use this scenario, but it's the most realistic one I have. We look at how we feel when we see our brothers and sisters from other Caribbean countries going through difficult times, like the hurricane in the Bahamas, and our hearts go out to them. We talk about, we're all one people, let's all support each other. When we talk about being able to access work beyond our own country and working in another Caribbean country and continuously pushing this message of integration and unity, it also has to work with the dollars and cents of it too, with the trade and our agricultural sector. And why this particular industry is not having the type of access that one would assume they'd be able to have, it begs a lot of questions about moving towards one integrated market.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a problem that's been faced not only in the sugar industry, but a lot of other things, that have tried to focus on, regional integration and regional development.
Yeah. All right, so we'll stay tuned with that one as well. And as a reminder, if you are looking for work, Transparent BPO, they are hiring a couple of hundred jobs. They said over 200 they'll be taking on.
Yeah, and in a whole different range of different positions. They've got the managerial posts, they've got, the ones in sales, customer service, where you have to be, directly speaking with people.
Yeah.
And if you're more of an introvert and you don't like that type of interaction, they also have the less interactive jobs, in terms, things like data entry, technical support. Things where you can, just use your fingers rather than
having to talk. But I think one of the things that we are clearly seeing is the continuous growth of the BPO, businesses, and Transparent BPO is a great example of that. They're just a little under 10 years in existence, and now going to be opening into another district very soon. So it seems that large businesses beyond Belize are very interested in working with Belizeans here. And clearly we are offering a good quality and caliber of service that the demand keeps growing.
Yeah, and it's also a good thing that, we are seeing at least a number of people employed. The expansion of this business means that we have more people. And especially in this field, it's a lot of younger people who can get jobs. And as one of the representatives said, is that the job has paid its bills. There's upward mobility. So it could be a good opportunity for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So if you are looking for employment, maybe this might be the great opportunity for you.
Yeah, and what I also love is that every time they come back, I realize there are many Belizeans who've moved up into some of the managerial posts, and they started off as agents, and I think that is a promising reason to join the company if you're looking for work. It may just start off as something temporary for now. You may really like it, and more importantly, you may grow in that sector, and that's critical for your own development, right?
Yep.
So that is our show for today. Remember, if you would like to contact us, send us an email at oye@channel5belize.com. Drop me a line at marlene_oye@channel5belize.com. Find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ and on Instagram at OYEBelize. And remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes.
Start your morning right.
Until then, keep your eyes, your mind,
and your heart
open. We'll see you soon. Enjoy your day, Belize.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank, our country, your bank, and Smart, bringing people together